Ladies and gentlemen, we are back once again. This is episode 156 of the world's greatest podcast. And before I introduce my guest today, I would like to say something. I always joke around with my buddies in the industry roofing that come on my podcast and with random guests about how Keepin It Rio is a worldwide phenomenon. And today is just another prime example of this being a true statement because my guest comes from a completely different part of the world. And for episode 156, I would like to welcome to Keepin It Rio, my friend Duncan Bhaskaran Brown. Duncan, good morning / afternoon. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to having a bit of a chat, and nice to bring a sort of like UK global perspective to the show.
Yes, you're actually my second guest from that region, so I'm extremely excited for it because the first one was very interesting as well. So
there's quite a high bar for me to live up to, is there?
Well, no, hey, every one of them's a high bar, I believe. You're going to be the greatest episode of all time, I can assure you, because I try to be better each one than I was the previous. So if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, you are going to be on the greatest episode of all time today. So congratulations.
I absolutely love that.
Terrific. Well, Duncan, tell me a little bit about yourself, my friend. I was doing a little bit of research here, but like I just told you a minute ago, I always like to be very authentic with the conversations. And I know very little, but I also know just enough that I know we're going to have a great conversation. So tell us about yourself, my friend.
For sure. So, I mean, the kind of like the boring stuff, you know, I live just outside Oxford. I've got a family, beautiful wife, lovely daughter. I've got a couple of bonsai trees. I like inline skating. I like Morris dancing, which is a weird British folk dancing tradition. I spend most of my days helping people to start living. You know, sometimes they think I help them to stop drinking, but what I really do is help them to start living. And the reason why I got into that was because, well, funnily enough, I developed a bit of a problem with alcohol myself. And to take you kind of all the way back there, when I was at school, I didn't really fit in. The teachers had one set of expectations for me, and I had another set of expectations, and they were quite different. So we often ended up at odds with each other. So I think a good example, one of my teachers asked me to write a poem. And I know that would make most kids quite nervous, but I was quite excited. You know, I was obviously one of the cool kids at school, as you can tell. And I wrote this poem, and do you know what? I think it was quite a good poem. I mean, considering I was about 8 or 9 at the time, I think it was all right. I used things that I now understand are called metaphor and alliteration and assonance and things like that. So I don't think it was entirely bad, but my teacher took one look at it and went, well, your spelling's rubbish. You've got all of the grammar in the wrong places. And frankly, your handwriting is atrocious. And I sort of said, yeah, but that's not what's important about writing, is it? You know, it's not the spelling and the handwriting and the grammar. It's what you write. It's the quality of what you write, whether it's worth reading or not. Surely that is far more important. And my teacher took one look at me and said, see me after school, Duncan. And that kind of pretty much sums up my educational experience. So fairly early on, I found myself trying to come up with ways of escaping that. You know, I never felt like I fitted in school or I belonged or I ever succeeded at anything. So I dived headfirst into the socially acceptable drug for 8-year-olds, which is, of course, chocolate. And I had an awful lot of chocolate and cookies and crisps. And I think that unhealthy relationship with food sort of teed me up for my unhealthy relationship with alcohol.
It has a tendency to do that, and it doesn't get recognized enough, but chocolate is a gateway drug for sure, my friend. And it's the hardest one to kick. So let's talk a little bit about this because you've got a very interesting intro so far here. I'm interested in finding out. So you find yourself with a little bit of a problem, and I'm guessing as a child, I guess we're going to say addiction, right? Is that the correct term that we're going to use for what we're talking about today?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be quite soft with it, and I tend to talk about things being overindulgence, and I just sort of say, well, you've got a bit of a dodgy relationship with alcohol, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the bend, it's addiction. I just sometimes I think the way we talk about it can make it a bit more comfortable for people. You know, they're happier to think about just overdoing it a little bit every now and again rather than having an addiction. So I think, you know, I tend to be quite careful about the language that I use, but at the end of the day, I mean, you can spend a long time discussing it. In fact, I was discussing it a couple of nights ago with a friend of mine who's a doctor of psychology. And he said that his definition of addiction was something that you continue to do despite repeated negative connotation, negative consequences. And I said, yeah, but honestly, I've fallen off my rollerblades twice this year. I broke a rib and I really, really did my knee in. But I'm still doing it. Does that mean I'm addicted to skating? And he just went, "Oh, Duncan, you're just being facetious again, aren't you?" And of course, I am a little bit. But the thing is, I think it doesn't really matter what you call it. I think it matters what you do about it.
There you go, my friend. And I appreciate and respect that perspective very much. So, as a child, you find yourself overindulging in sweets and things that are not healthy at that point in time. You did mention a little earlier that you were the cool kid. And I'm guessing that this is probably the moment where you realize that chocolate can then alter your body type. And I'm assuming that at some point during this overindulgence, you found yourself to maybe not be the most physically fit person in the room and that there may have been negative consequences. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So I went from being very, very interested in athletics. I'm going to kind of like date myself. If people are really into British distance running, they'll remember Seb Coe and Steve Cram, and there was like I watched them a lot when I was growing up, and I was like, wow, I really want to be like those guys. And then yeah, I got into the wrong kind of foods, and my body became considerably less athletic. That is a fair way of putting it. And I think it's one of those things that you end up in a bit of a cycle that, you know, I wasn't particularly popular. So I kind of tried to mitigate that. I tried to compensate for that by eating, but that just made me weigh a bit more, which made me even less popular, which made me want to do it even more. And you just end up in that cycle, and it tends to go one way, and that direction tends to be downwards.
Absolutely, it does. And I've been a victim of that myself in life. And there have been many times where I've fluctuated up and down. And you get to a certain point, I guess, where, like you said, you become less popular. You have negative feelings about yourself. The way that you perceive yourself is never, what it actually really is. But we see ourselves and we're our harshest critics. So that affects your confidence. It affects everything that you do in life. And then at some point, for a lot of people, and unfortunately not everyone, but there's a moment, and the moment hits you and you think to yourself, why is this the way that it is? How have I got to this? What do I need to do? How do I change it? And then you actually start to do that. So tell me a little bit about your moment when you finally just said, look, this is enough. This isn't who I want to be. I'm better than this. I can do more. And it's time for that to happen.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it's because I'm not very bright and I don't really have those kind of realizations, but for me, it was a period of time. It wasn't just like, the way it usually goes in these kind of memoirs, the moodily lit 4 a.m. staring in the mirror kind of thing. That never really happened to me, but there was a period of my life where I sort of decided I needed to make the most profound changes. So I I continued to eat badly throughout my life, but I added to the mix things like cigarettes and alcohol because I realized they were just bigger hammers for that particular nail, weren't they? I found that they were just more effective at transporting me away from the pain and the suffering, and helping me to forget my life. So I added these to the mix, and what what happened, I guess, was I started off as a very social drinker, and it was all about hanging out with the boys and having fun and chasing girls and all of the stuff that you're supposed to do when you're that kind of age. But as time progressed, I drank with less and less people, but I drank more and more. And I took it to its logical conclusion and ended up pretty much sitting on my own in my flat, drinking a couple of bottles of wine every night. But remarkably, during this time, I managed to actually start a fairly serious relationship with an amazing and wonderful lady, and we decided to start a family, and we quite enjoyed doing that. That was quite good fun. But unfortunately, during the course of doing that, she had a miscarriage, which of course was not fun at all. I mean, it was very, very painful. It was very hard on her. She really struggled at the time. And, you know, I just wasn't there for her. I was pretty much a terrible partner, because all I knew how to do in situations like that was just retreat into the bottle. You know, my coping mechanism for stress was alcohol. So the more stressed I got, the more difficult our relationship became, the more I drank. And, you know, oh, look, that's another one of those cycles, isn't it? And it was going in the wrong direction again. And like I say, I never got to the point where I actually articulated it in such stark details. But I think I spent a couple of months really kind of toying with these ideas, wrestling with the idea, you know, what do I want from life? What is actually important to me? You know, what do I want? Do I want to have a family, or do I want to have another drink? And thankfully, I made the right decision. And almost 9 months to the day after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born.
Good way to celebrate, I suppose. There you go. Day
Yeah, it's
one.
also a really handy way of remembering your sober date. I just take
Yeah,
9 months off her age, and then I'm golden.
that's beautiful. Well, congratulations on that, and for making that decision and actually taking the action to change your life and the way that things were going. And let's talk a little bit about that process, because I've spoken to a lot of people, and I'm in the roofing industry, which here in the United States, there is a real issue with drug and alcohol abuse in this industry for many reasons. And one of them being the fact that, you know, health insurance is expensive. A lot of these guys that are working out on job sites are the ones that are getting hurt, that are doing the physical labor, but they're the ones that can least afford, you know, proper health care. So you have to do something. If your shoulder hurts, you know, you find a way to take care of it. And a lot of people fall into this horrible lifestyle. Like you said, it's just a cycle. And I've known a lot of people over the course of my 25-year career that are no longer with us because they weren't able to escape it. So let's talk a little bit about that for you, the struggles that are involved with it as well. So you've made the decision, you're gonna have a family, you're gonna give up everything that's been bad that you've been doing. It's not easy. I can assure you of that. I know a lot of people that have a very hard time. So tell me about your experience with just, you know, making that decision, and then how that process went.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing to realize, I suppose, is that having realized that you've got a problem is quite a major step. You know, this is something that comes up a lot. I mean, I hang around with a lot of speakers and trainers and coaches, so we all sort of speak the same language, and it amazes me across all of the different fields how many people talk about this, that awareness has to happen before action. You know, you cannot act unless you are aware of it. So if you have simply got to the point where you have realized that you have got a problem and you need to change, you have taken a massive step, and that is really important. But it isn't everything. So what do you do after that? Well, look, there are a lot of different ways of getting free, and I'm perfectly happy to talk about all of the other ones. The technique I used would sort of be called cognitive realignment, if you want to be really fancy about it. But in essence, what it's about is changing your beliefs. So we all have beliefs about alcohol. Those come from a lot of different places. So I guess a lot of guys out there, they believe that alcohol makes them tough. You know, we associate strength and alcohol, and we do that for the simple reason that well, I don't know. Have you ever watched the Super Bowl? Because they tend to have beer commercials before the Super Bowl, don't they? And I think
A few.
the real irony of that, of course, is I'm going to mention Tom Brady, and I know he's a bit of a wedge issue. I know he's not popular with some people, but you can't argue with the fact that he is the most successful American football player ever. You know, he's just got more rings than anyone else, and he doesn't drink. So I think that's the real irony, and that's one of the things that you've got to understand about these beliefs that you have around alcohol. They're mostly based on a myth, you know. Alcohol companies love to use the NFL as a vehicle for promoting their product, yet the most successful NFL player of all time does not drink. So the strength and the dedication and the absolutely elite level of performance that you see on the football field has got nothing to do with alcohol, yet it is used to promote alcohol and create this false belief around alcohol making us strong, alcohol making us real men. So, I mean, that's just one example. You know, people often have a lot of head junk around stress, around celebration, around friendship, around sex, even around work. I mean, a lot of people find that almost drinking is a part of the job. I imagine, you know, if you're a sort of subcontractor and you're always looking for work, probably, you know, going out for a few drinks with people and networking and keeping people sweet, you know, that you could consider that to be a part of your job. So there's all of these beliefs that we have around alcohol. And I think the most important thing to do is get to grips with those and be honest with them and, you know, actually look at them and examine them, because most of the time we don't think about why we do things. We just do them. A lot of why we do things is because we believe certain things to be true. So I like to examine the beliefs with people, you know, bring them out into the open, ask a few questions. You know, is it true? Is it just that example like sporting success? It's got nothing to do with alcohol. It's just used to advertise alcohol. So is it true? But more important than that, you know, is it helping you? Is it serving you? Is it making you the person that you want to be? Because if it's not helping you get forward in your life, you know, that brings about a lot of questions about why you would be drinking it. And we think that, you know, and we believe that alcohol serves us and that it gives us an awful lot and it provides us with a lot of things. And I think if you really get deeply down into most of those things, you'll see that they're not necessarily true. So once you've got underneath the hood kind of thing and dealt with all of those beliefs, then it becomes a question of kind of managing the thought process. Some people would call them cravings, but at the end of the day, cravings happen in your brain and they are therefore just thoughts. So we do some work on thought management, which is about how you can, you know, alter the script in your head. So when your brain is saying, let's have a drink, you know, you can change that and you can actually take your thoughts down a different path. So we start with the beliefs, we do a little bit of thought management. And once you've done all of that work, honestly, the action, that's the easy bit. The problem is that a lot of people try and do it the other way around. They try and combat the action and they hope that the thoughts and the beliefs are going to catch up, but they never do.
You're exactly right. And if you don't believe 100%, then it's very easy to fall off of that mission. And I think that's what makes it so impressive is when you do realize, you know, there are so many opportunities for pitfalls along the way. And the way that things are justified, you made a great point there. And I've really never thought of it like that. You know, it's almost justification just to be able to say, hey, I have to do it. You know, I know it's probably not the best, but I have to. And that can give you a lot of false confidence. It can give you a lot of, you know, bad things that come from those types of decisions. And being able to stand up and say, hey, look, this is not me. This isn't what I'm going to do. In spite of the fact that you've got all these triggers that can go on, you know, throughout the course of any given day, really. Tell me a little bit about how you shift your mindset when you've got, you know, you're having a horrible day, something bad just happened, you know, you just got in a fight with somebody, you're having problems at the office, whatever it is. And these thoughts creep into your mind a little bit. So tell me a little bit about how you handle those and how you avoid, you know, those triggers actually going into effect?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that were really powerful as a part of my journey, and one of them is just so incredibly simple. You just ask yourself the question, how is that going to help? Because, like, if you're having a bad day, whatever your drug of choice, if you take any of it, I can guarantee you it will make things worse. It's never ever going to make things better. There is no drug of choice out there that will ever improve the situation. It will only make it worse. So having the ability to take that step back and actually think it through rather than just act instinctually, I think that is massive. And part of that thought management process is about preparing you to do that. So it is about getting you used to putting that separation between stimulus and action, because there is always a gap between the trigger and the behavior, between the stimulus and the action. And we miss that gap most of the time. But if you learn to take advantage of it a little bit more, when you are having those bad days, you can ask yourself, how is that going to help? How is that going to get me further to my goals? For me, it was all about, how is that going to help me become a parent? And then once my child was born, it was all, how is that going to help me become the kind of parent that I want to be? And the answer is very, very simple. It's not going to help. The other thing that I always like to sort of think about is, I like to help people calculate how much they would spend on alcohol if they continue to drink for the rest of their lives. Now, my maths is phenomenally bad, and I'm not really sure of the exchange rate, but let's just pretend, we could just do it in dollars, because then it would work, wouldn't it? But if you spent $6 a day on alcohol, I don't know, £6 in the UK will buy you a bottle of wine or a 4-pack of beer. And I expect $6 in the US, that's similar sort of amount of alcohol you're going to buy. So we're not
I would
talking about...
assume, yeah. We're not looking at high top dollar alcohol. We're looking at the
I
bottom
never
of the
used to
barrel.
drink the
Yeah.
top dollar stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. $6, you can get some volume for sure.
Yeah, but not a huge amount, and not the really good stuff. So it's not actually a lot to spend on alcohol. But if you spend $6 a day on alcohol for 20 years, and you actually work out the inflation on that, so you work it out in real terms, that will be $74,500 that you've spent in 20 years on alcohol. And I always think, that is a great thing to sort of think about. Because you look at a drink, and then you can ask yourself this simple question: is this drink worth $74,500? And the answer to that question is always going to be no, isn't it? And I think part of that is understanding that if you don't drink the first one, you won't drink any other ones. So the key is to avoid the first one. If you don't spend the money on the first one, you won't spend any of the rest of the money. So if you spend the money on the first one, you will spend the money on the rest of them. So effectively, any drink that I drink would cost me at least $74,500. That, my friend, is a motivator.
Indeed it is. And that's a very, very good way of breaking that down and keeping that in your mindset and saying, okay, anybody can say it's only $6, but when you equate the two and you say, hey, look, step one is the first step to that entire disaster. And without it, the story's all right. I can definitely appreciate that. And I think that I can sense that you've got a real good understanding of how these things work and how to effectively, work against them. And when we started the show, you mentioned that you are helping to change lives. So to me, that implies that this is something that you do for a profession. And I want to dig a little bit into that. At what point did you decide, my mission, my goal in life is to help as many people as I can, to either get them out of that state or to help them completely avoid it altogether? Was there a specific thing that happened, a specific time where you just said, hey, this is me and this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, well, again, I'd love to give you the nice, neat answer, the 4 a.m. moment. But as I said, I'm not that smart. It takes me a while to work these things out. But what I guess I have always been involved in education in some respect, adult education, not children. I can't do children; they scare me. Love them and everything, but no, I quite like taking them to school and leaving them there. Anyways, what I was doing when I got sober was helping people in local government. So I was working with leaders in local government and helping them to, make the most of the opportunity that they'd got after being elected or being appointed to a more senior leadership position. And I enjoyed that. I mean, it had its struggles, but it was a lot of coaching and training, and that's, those are things that I love doing. Speaking, coaching, training, writing. I am just happy if I can do that all day long. And it's sort of like it started to dawn on me that really all I was doing was helping people to replicate the success that I myself had in local government. And while I'm enormously proud of my track record as a local politician, what I am most proud of in life, don't tell my wife or my daughter, what I am most proud of in life is stopping drinking. It's had the biggest impact on my life. So I was sitting there like helping people to be a little bit more like me. And I was like, well, the thing that you really want to copy, honestly, if you want to really get the success, if you want the energy, the focus, the time, the calm, the peace, the potential, all of that performance stuff, if you want all of that, then I should be talking to you about not drinking. So I sort of pivoted a little bit and I trained with the Easy Way Clinic, which is the world's most successful stop smoking service. And I worked with hundreds and hundreds of smokers every year to help them stop smoking. But that was enjoyable. It wasn't really enough though. So I got quite obsessed with it. I started reading a lot. I did some courses at Cornell University, the Chartered Management Institute, lots of places like that. And that was great, but it wasn't really enough. So I got even more obsessed. I started doing my own research. I started interviewing people. I started writing. I've written a couple of books. Started, doing much more one-to-one stuff with people that I met along the way. And it's all kind of blossomed. And you know what? Like yesterday, I was reading, this is a great book. It's called Alcohol, No Ordinary Commodity. And it is one of those books that you could wave at most people and scare them to death with. It's the kind of thing that I think that it is my duty to read it so you don't have to. So it is an ongoing process.
Yes, and constantly changing, and that I think is the most beautiful thing, is that it really is a day-to-day challenge for yourself and for your people that you are working with. Like I said earlier, just be better today than you were yesterday. And if you can just focus one day at a time, it builds up over the course of your life and you can really accomplish some amazing things. And you look back at your former self and say, wow, I cannot imagine ever thinking of a position where I would find myself there again. And when you can step back over the course of that time and look and really see, wow, what a major accomplishment. It's something you can be super proud of. But I always do like to ask this as well. It's a great, happy, we help a lot of people. We overcome a lot of adversity. We overcome a lot of personal demons on our way to our personal glory. But not everybody is able or willing to put in the real work. And there are people that say, I want to stop drinking. I want to stop smoking. I want to get better. But at the end of the day, they don't take the proper action. They end up falling back into that cycle. Have you personally ever had that happen? And any of the people that you work with, have you had a specific individual that really stands out to you where it was like, wow, they just don't get it. They want it allegedly, but they just don't get it. And definitely don't mention any names because this is a worldwide phenomenon podcast. But do you have anybody that you can just think of that you think, wow, if only I could have, maybe it could have ended up differently for that person?
Yeah. I mean, I have worked with a few people over the years that they haven't been as successful as they perhaps could. And I think there's kind of this nuance with it that actually the stopping bit is pretty easy. The getting past the drug of choice, even something really nasty like heroin or crystal meth, in the right environment with some medical support, you can do the withdrawal. It's going to take you a week, fortnight, absolute max. But you can get past it. So the stopping bit is actually the easy bit. It's the staying stopped bit. That's the difficult bit. And that, as you rightly point out, that is the work. And it's an ongoing thing. And I talked a lot about when I was younger, being in those spirals that were constant downward spirals. They just built and built and built in a worse way, and things got worse and worse. What I always try and work with people on is creating this positive spiral, because there is no such thing as standing still in the world. You cannot do it. And if you don't believe me, have a look at the works of Sir Isaac Newton. He basically said, if something is moving, if everything else is equal, it will continue to move. And whatever direction you're going in, you will continue to go in that direction. So the trick is to keep moving in a positive direction, rather than, because if you're not moving in a positive direction, you will end up going in a negative direction. And that is the work. And it is annoying, and it is work. And there is no shortcut. The only solution is reps. In fact, I've been trying to learn the soul slide, which is this really cool way to stop on your skates. And I have not learned how to do it yet, but I am getting a lot better. And the reason why I'm getting a lot better is because I spent 20 minutes last night doing nothing but these stops. And I'm not perfect at it, but I can at least do it without totally falling over and looking like an idiot now. And there's no secret. It's like literally no secret to anything you want to achieve. You just have to put in the reps. And I think the reason why a lot of people struggle is because the work they have to do is often emotional. A lot. So the research that we've done on the reasons why people start drinking, there's quite a lot of them who have some sort of traumatic event that happened to them in childhood that they haven't properly dealt with. There's also quite a lot of people who were drinking at a relatively normal way for quite a long period of time. They wouldn't have stood out among their friends and family members as being an unusual drinker, and then something happens in their adult life. That can be bereavement, it can be divorce, it can be loss of custody of your children, it can be employment issues, business issues, all those kind of traumatic events that happen to us as adults. And that's what really, really spikes their drinking. There's another group of people who drink more around social anxiety, fitting in, wanting to be a bit rebellious. So they don't quite fit into those trauma buckets. But a lot of people that drink, they have some unprocessed psychological issues that they need to address. And, there is no shortcut to that. You just have to do the work. You have to do the cognitive work. So you're going to have to talk about it. You're going to have to think it through. You probably also have to do the physical work as well. You'll probably have to do something to get more in touch with your body, because there's a reason why we call them feelings, because you feel them. They are a whole body sensation. So that might be yoga, it might be massage, it might be eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. It could be breath work. There's a lot of great physical therapies. I mean, it could be dancing. Honestly, I don't know whether this comes across, but I quite like skating, and I think it's quite therapeutic. I think it's part of my therapy journey. But you've got to do those therapeutic things, and most people don't want to, because they're kind of annoying. They're kind of hard, and unfortunately, they often cost a lot of money. Access to decent psychological therapy is very patchy. I know a lot of people believe that we have the perfect healthcare system in the UK. A lot of people respect the NHS, but you will struggle to get talking therapy for free in the UK. If you want it, you are going to have to pay for it. And I know the situation is probably even worse in the US.
It is. And I mean, it takes a huge commitment. And, that's the unfortunate thing, is how much you really do have to commit and how much you have to sacrifice just to live a better life, just to be healthier, just to be more productive and to enjoy your time on earth. But that's a topic of discussion for a completely different episode. Um, I love the, getting more reps, and it's really the only way you can do it. And I'll tell you a real quick story, Duncan. About 3.5 years ago, I was going to be a speaker at an event, and they do those little facial, the little cards that show, Chuck is going to be speaking at the event. And it had a picture of my face on it, and my face was probably like 4 times the size of what it is today. And I looked at the picture and I couldn't believe it. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I didn't recognize myself in that photo. And it was due to the fact that I had moved to a new town and I didn't know anybody. And I just kind of, it didn't have anything else going on. So it's like, let's go grab lunch. What am I having for dinner? I'm not doing anything. But I made a decision and I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. And literally it's, from that day forward, I just started. I was walking, running. I did a half marathon. I signed up at the gym. I started doing training. I literally went to the gym at 3:30 this morning before our podcast. I was already, I've already done my workout for the day.
Did you take a photo of your watch and put it on social media?
I do that all the time. Yes. Yeah, that's my calling card.
That's cool. That's cool. I love those.
I look at it for my memories from years gone by. And it's funny because I look from 3 years ago and I could see, wow, I still had a long way to go. 2 years ago, you see some of the progress. 1 year ago, it's like, okay, I look pretty much the same as I do now. And then you go look at a current picture and you put all of them together and you just think, how did that happen? Well, I'll tell you how it happened. It's because I got up off the couch. I went outside, I went for a walk, and then I did it the next day and the day after that and the day after that. And it became something that I enjoyed. And now it's something that, if I don't do something physical on a daily basis, I feel lazy. I feel like, oh, I gained 20 pounds in one day, it seems like, and you're just sluggish. But you don't want to do that every day. I can think of a particular month where my goal was that I was going to run 3 miles a day for the entire month. I was going to do 100 miles and it was 3.33 and I'm going to do it for 30 days. So I got to the last day of the month and I didn't want to do it. And it was raining and I'm just looking outside going, oh my gosh, like I made it the entire month and I'm on the last day. And to this moment, I'm still amazed that it was something that I was even debating in my head. But I made the decision not to do it, right? At about 5 o'clock in the evening, I decided I'm not going to do it. It's raining out, precious me. I don't want to get wet. That just sounds like it would just not be fun. So I'm going to sit here at home and do nothing instead, watch some TV, maybe order a pizza. Well, it gets to be about 11:30 at night. And I start thinking to myself, man, really, like you're giving up on this on the last day after you did all that work. It literally will void out everything that you did. So I got up and it was downpouring and I ran 3.12 miles in a torrential downpour at 11:30 at night, just so I could say, you know what? I saw it through to the end and I made it happen. And as you get those small wins along the way, they continue to stack up. You get more confidence. You start to really, change your entire lifestyle. And then you get to look forward to a nice, bright future. So let's talk a little bit about what your future looks like now that you've got yourself in a great position. You're helping people. You've got a wonderful life yourself. You're doing great things. You're having fun. What does this look like for you moving forward in life? If everything goes according to your plan, which obviously it never does, but what's Duncan doing 10 years down the road?
So what really excites me at the moment, what we're working really, really hard on is doing more alcohol awareness stuff in businesses, companies, organizations, corporates, that sort of thing. Because what I've noticed is that most big companies these days, they've got a well-being program, and that's great. I mean, I'm so pleased that well-being is something that's come onto the agenda, that businesses have realized that they have a bit of a moral responsibility to ensure that their staff are healthy and safe and happy. But they've also figured out that, it's good for the bottom line, that if you are generally happier, you will work harder, you will take less sick days, you will be less likely to leave the company. So, it's got a solid financial benefit, as well as being, a bit of a moral kind of a legacy piece, if you like, for a lot of companies. And that's great. But most of those wellbeing programs just don't touch alcohol. They don't have anything in it about alcohol. And honestly, I love yoga. I drink an awful lot of water. I wear a fitness tracker. But yoga, big water bottles and fitness trackers are going to do you absolutely no good if you are drinking a bottle of wine every day. If you're drinking a 6-pack of beer every night, just like, don't bother with yoga. It's not going to help you. You need to address your drinking first. And for about 40% of people, they need to rebalance their relationship with alcohol. And I would argue they need to do that before they do anything else. It has more of an effect on your lifestyle than changing your diet, exercise, sleep, hydration, you name it. Drinking too much will negatively impact all of those things. So what we do is we go in and we work with companies as a part of their existing wellbeing program, and we kind of plug in the holes, if you like. And we develop that kind of alcohol awareness. We do some educational pieces, we do some diagnostic stuff, we do some coaching stuff, we do some culture stuff. We help build alcohol awareness champions, things like that. We run alcohol-free events. We are very good at throwing parties. Just alcohol-free parties. So you can have them at lunchtime. It's like a double bonus, isn't it? So that's what we're doing more and more, and it's starting to sort of pick up and take off. And I think in 10 years, it's going to be absolutely huge. And I'm really excited about that. We're going to do a lot of really, really good work, and we're going to help a lot more people. And I'm particularly committed to that because I love working one-to-one with people, and really getting to grips with the knotty, difficult, hard problems. But actually, the majority of the harm that's done by alcohol is not done to the people who you would think are alcoholics, the ones that would get diagnosed as having substance use disorders. The majority of the harm is actually done to the people that are drinking 3 or 4 times a week, because there's a lot more of them. They're doing less damage to themselves, they're doing less damage to their minds and their bodies and their lifestyles, but because there are so many more of them, the net damage is much, much higher. So that, I think, is a really exciting area to get into, to try and reduce that kind of damage. And we're not coming along and saying, look, you've got to be like me. Honestly, you don't have to be like me. You don't have to get yourself a pair of skates. It's fine. You don't have to be sober, but we want you to rebalance your relationship with alcohol, and we want you to get into that low-risk drinking category. If you want to keep drinking, that's great, but we want to help you get into that low-risk category. So a lot of what we talk about these days is about moderation, about mindfulness, about bright lines, and about actually enjoying it. If you're going to drink, you might as well enjoy it. Don't do it on autopilot. Don't have a drink simply because it's Friday. Have a drink because you're somewhere where it's going to enhance the experience, and do it in a way that you are really going to get the most out of it, that you're really going to enjoy it. So that, I think, is, so exciting. I think we can really help a lot of people that way.
Yeah, what a great program. And I'm super happy to have been able to talk to you about this today, because you are going to change a lot of lives. And one thing I do want to do, and this is going to seem kind of weird right now because of the timing, but I forgot to do this earlier. I want to teach you about something really quickly, Duncan, if it's okay. This is only going to take a couple seconds, but every episode of Keepin It Rio is brought to you by my wonderful sponsor, which is a company called roofer.com. And that's ROOFR. And basically, Roofer is a roofing company's best friend. They take care of basically every task, from introduction to your customer all the way to the final payment, everything in between. And I would like to take 20 seconds just to share with you a quick word from my sponsor, and then we're going to start to wind it down a little bit. But before that, Duncan, let me show you all about Roofer, my friend.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payments in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free today.
There you go. So if you ever decide to start a roofing company, you know exactly where to go to get everything you need all in one spot. So thank you to Roofer for that. And as we start to get towards the 45-minute mark here, I like to kind of start winding down a little. And one of the questions I love to ask every single guest that I have, because I think that the beauty of doing podcasts and things like social media that we have is that we can reach more people just by having conversations like we are today. And I think that there are a lot of people that are probably going to tune into this at some point. I always joke and say every episode is going to be the most, the best one ever. And I have no reason to doubt that this is the best episode we've ever had. And it's going to get millions of views at some point. Now, it may be 300 years from now, but it's going to get millions of views. And we're going to help change people's lives through this podcast. And that's one of the cool things about it. So let's say that somebody right now in, I have literally all over the world people that watch this. Let's say someone in Houston, Texas is watching right now and they say, you know what? This guy just really, really struck a nerve with me. Like I don't consider myself an alcoholic, but I'm drinking. It's, I'm drinking because it's 7 p.m. on a weekday and I gotta go to bed. I want to learn a little bit more about this. I want to see if this guy can help me, or I just want to follow his journey as well because it's inspiring. What are the ways that the audience can follow you, can get a hold of you, can potentially work with you, and maybe have a life-changing experience somewhere completely across the globe because of this episode today on Keepin It Rio? I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say hello to the people in the future. I hope they've invented hoverboards by now.
Right. And I'd also like to say that we both look very good for our age at this point. It's probably, 300 years in the future and they've still got YouTube and we're still ranking up at the top. So we're doing well for our age and we appreciate you guys very much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, like I hope you're enjoying, because that's the thing that I really want to do. I want to go on a cruise when I retire, but I want to go on a cruise to the rings of Saturn. So I hope you figured that all out. Anyway, so yes, I am very easy to find online if you can spell Bhaskaran Brown, but most people can't even pronounce it. So this is what I suggest. If you put getover.uk into the internet, that's getover.uk, nice and simple. That will take you to a bit of my website. And from there, you can download a copy of one of my books called Get Over Indulgence. And that really is my journey. That's how I went from being that, a little kid that was writing poetry and arguing with his teacher and then eating a lot of chocolate to the kind of healthier, happier, slimmer, trimmer, more action-orientated version of myself. It really is basically just a story. There's a little bit of the learning in there. I've sneaked a little bit of education in there, but mostly it's just a kind of funny, interesting tale. And at getover.uk, you can download the PDF or the Kindle version, or if you can stand to listen to me for 2 hours and 45 minutes, you can download the audio as well. And that's completely free. That is a gift to your listeners. But getover.uk is actually a part of, it takes you to a part of my website. And you can find out all about everything that we do there. Or the other pretty easy way of doing it is just run along to Amazon, excuse me, and put Real Men Quit into Amazon. And even in 300 years, it'll still be in print. So grab that. That's my book about stopping drinking for men. Unfortunately, we don't do a great job of helping each other when it comes to stopping drinking. So I thought I'd write something that was specifically for us. So if you like sport, if you like Star Wars, if you like The Terminator, if you like really bad jokes, then you're going to love it.
There you go. And who doesn't love that stuff? So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. I highly encourage you to follow this man. This has been a tremendous conversation. I've enjoyed this greatly. I've got new perspectives, which is what I always try to have when I come into a podcast. And for the people that watch Keepin It Rio, the reality of this is Duncan and I met about 4 minutes before we recorded this episode. We live on opposite sides of the planet, so we've never spoken before. And I think that's what's so cool about this is that, you just gave a really great story to a total stranger, but I think that it could be life-changing for both sides. And I think that is such a cool thing. So thank you for taking the time to be here today with me. I appreciate that. This is episode 156. And as far as I could tell, it is the top one at this point. When I look at the list, it's right at the very top. So we did it, my friend. I appreciate you, Duncan. And thank you to everyone who watches Keepin It Rio. Like I always say, share this episode if it's helped you. Share it if it hasn't helped you. Just share it because it's cool. Subscribe to the channel so I can eventually stop doing roofing and just doing podcasting. And until next time, we always end our episode with the corniest tagline of all time, which is